Hi, everybody, and welcome to Unified, a podcast feed from First Church Belmont Unitarian Universalist. We'll be sharing sermons and stories, especially thematic content made new every week. We're so glad you're here, and for more information about who we are and opportunities to grow and deepen, swing by the church on Sundays or check out our website at uubelmont.org. And for now, enjoy this new content. I really love this time of year for a number of reasons, but one of them is I have always been a Unitarian Universalist my entire life, and since I was about your age and younger, I've really, really loved that moment that many of us are going to have in just a couple days, where we sing Silent Night and we light the candles. And I remember that just imprinted really early on and only got a little bit confused about it a few years later because people would ask me, well, then is it a Christian church? And I was like, well, no. And then they were like, well, then why are you celebrating Christmas? And for me, this is one of the most fascinating bits of who we are. Because surely we grew out of Christian roots, both Unitarianism and Universalism were Christian in their faith, and we hold this vast complexity. And many years ago, when I was in college, I really got excited about, I studied comparative religion, got excited about this thing called the quest for the historical Jesus. Had a really incredible professor, and basically you're treating the Bible like a mystery novel, and you're piecing together, well, okay, it's mentioned, these stories are mentioned here, and chances are, probably there was a historical person named Jesus, and probably some of the teachings that we ascribe to him, probably he actually said at some point. Certainly he opposed the regime at the time. Certainly he was dangerous enough to be put to death. But then everything that happens after that is where it gets really interesting to me, especially the early Christian church, because they didn't celebrate Christmas for a really long time, relatively, until the 4th century. And it is only then that we start having Christmas, and certainly then having Christmas now at this time of year. Those of you who will stay after, there's a Yule log that Kyle made, so we'll have cake after the service, which is very exciting. But the reason we did that is because right then, in that 4th century, when all of a sudden you had a complicated moment where the early Christian church, which had no power and no money, all of a sudden has so much power and so much money when it's adopted as the official religion, and they want to convert a bunch of people. So they say, you know what, we should actually start celebrating Christmas, and let's put it where those pagans have their solstice celebration. Let's put it smack dab in the middle of winter. And so that's when it gets moved, combined with Yule. And that's why we have the kind of Christmas that we have right now. And in some ways that's a sad story, but I think it's not. Because one of the great blessings of Unitarian Universalism, the way we live it and practice it now, is we can hold complex reality. And so we can hold the fact that there was this person who a long time ago would wash people's feet no matter what, would bless people that other people thought were unclean and bad. There was this person who toppled over tables in the temple, who called us to a different kind of connection. And there is this holy moment, this time of year, when the solstice comes, when the darkness comes, and we can hold all of this and celebrate all of this. And we can eat Kyle's delicious cake. And we can come together in a couple nights, and we can hold candles, and we can sing about a baby, whether we're atheists or theists, whether we're Christian, agnostic, or my very favorite, people who don't even give it that much thought to bother to name their own beliefs. We come together in these holy moments, and we remember what is most important.
I'm here to share with you the story of how the Unitarians invented Christmas. I would like to point out Universalists are great people too, but they're not included in this story. because they're universalists. They're included in every story, so they're here. So some of you might know a story called The Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens. Perhaps you've read the book, you've seen it performed by Muppets, or have otherwise taken up that story in our culture. In this story, the character of Ebenezer Scrooge is visited by three ghosts. The ghost of Christmas past, who comes and shares Ebenezer's memories with him. There's the ghost of Christmas present, who shares what life is like currently, and the ghost of Christmases yet to come, who reveal to Ebenezer Scrooge what his actions will do in the future. This morning, I am playing the role of the ghost of Unitarian Christmases past and how it informs our current practices. And so our first stop in this long history is in the year 1659. Now, a lot happened that year, but one thing in particular related to Christmas. That was the year that the Massachusetts Bay Colony outlawed Christmas. I know, shocking, right? There was a law that they passed called the Penalty for Keeping Christmas. And it was made to prevent, quote, disorders arising because some people still observed such festivals as were superstitiously kept in other countries to the great dishonor of God. So if you were caught feasting, if you were caught not working, if you were caught simply enjoying and celebrating Christmas, you were fined. You were fined 5 shillings. I don't know what that means today, but that was the penalty. And this law was made by the Puritans, a group of people, by the way, who happened to be part of our religious heritage. It was made by them because Christmas did not show up in the Bible, and they wanted folks to live according to the Bible. And so if this was not present in that text, then they thought it shouldn't happen. There shouldn't be any celebration or any joy in that time of the year. And so it was outlawed. And it was outlawed on the books here for about 20 years. And it had a lasting impact, though. And Christmas wasn't celebrated like it is today until the mid-1800s. And so let us jump ahead in the timeline to that time. And we're going to jump to 1832. Now, a lot happened that year, but one thing related to Christmas. And that was the year Reverend Charles Follen, a Unitarian, displayed a Christmas tree in his house. Now, some of you might know the Reverend Follen as an abolitionist or a revolutionary, but he was also a very sentimental fellow. And he grew up in Germany, where they would bring they would bring fir trees inside. And he wanted his children to have that experience. So he went out in his yard and he cut down a fir tree and brought it inside and plopped it into a tub, because that is what he did. And he decorated it with his family, with eggshells that were painted, with candles. The house did not burn down, in case you're wondering, and other wonderful little oddities. And we know about this because there happened to be another Unitarian present. And her name is Harriet Martineau. She was visiting from England, and she was writing about her travels. And she wrote about spending Christmas with the Follens, who lived over in Lexington. And she writes, quote, "The grand fun of all was to make the clergyman and an aunt or two get up and spin around," which of course happens all the time around Christmas trees. She writes about the joy. She writes about the joy that the tree inspired. Now, to be clear, this wasn't the invention of the Christmas tree, but it was perhaps what popularized the Christmas tree and how we use it today, how we bring it inside and decorate it. Our final stop on this timeline is 1843. Now, a lot happened that year, but one thing related to Christmas. And that was when Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol. Now, Charles Dickens is a Unitarian, and as I mentioned earlier in the story, the part about the 3 ghosts. But there was one ghost in particular that seemed to have a lasting impression on Ebenezer Scrooge, and that was the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And what this ghost reveals is what Ebenezer Scrooge's relationships do, how perhaps he might be causing harm in his community based on the way he was living. And so this ghost reveals that to him. He sees how his actions, his relationships are living out in the world. And when he awakes on Christmas, he decides to change. He decides to be in a better relationship with people. He decides to celebrate. He decides, some might say, to not be puritanical. And so not only does he bring joy into himself, but he imbues joy into the community as well. And there is celebration. And so also the idea of the spirit of Christmas emerges as well. And so with these three examples, I tried to show you how the Unitarians invented Christmas, how they changed it from something that was outlawed to something that included joy and kindness and connecting with one another. And though Christmas does not have to mean just Christmas trees and kindness, perhaps it can mean that as well. Thank you.
Last night was the longest night of the year. And this morning is the first morning of a day that will be a tiny bit longer than yesterday was. And tomorrow will be a tiny bit longer than that. Indistinguishable at first, and then building and building towards more light. Such is the rhythm of our natural year. Our animal neighbor creatures take extra time to rest and to eat yummy treats during this time of the year. Some of our animal creature bodies may need a little more rest or a little Yule cake log during this time of year. There's even extra sugar cookies that the children decorated yesterday at the holiday party. I ate 16. In this time of year, we turn to one another with a little bit more gentleness in this gentle of the longest night. I used to live in Seattle, Washington, a place similar to this place where during this time of year, the sun sets so early, nearly 3:30 in the afternoon, it seems like the evening stretches out infinitely, and I find myself going to bed at 8 o'clock because I can't take any more evening. While I was living there, the first time I moved there, throughout the summer before daylight savings and the clocks changed, I heard people in my congregation and my community ominously referring to something that they called the big dark. Now, what in the world could that be? People talked about it reverently before it arrived. Meeting times were moved up. Some evening gatherings were canceled altogether so people wouldn't have to drive late at night. People adjusted their meal times, their sleeping hours in preparation. The worship staff of the church where I worked gathered extra candles. We planned snacks and coffee hour, joy practices in worship, all in preparation. And then daylight savings time came, and it was really dark after that. And sometime in the middle of that first long winter for me, I said to somebody at my church, "It feels like the big dark could go on forever." And he said to me, "The big dark never lasts forever." And today is the first day that we have a little bit more light. And so we come into a place like this, into a community like this, where one of the things that we do is share music, where one of the things that we do is teach one another to sing. Later in the week, we will light candles, we will honor some of the Christmas rituals and traditions of our ancestors. You heard from my colleagues earlier in the service about some of those rituals and traditions, why we do them at this time of the year, why they coincide with the solstice and with Yule. We know now that even though the light is starting to return today, we are not at the end of winter. We are perhaps at the beginning. There is more darkness ahead and a lot of winter left. There might be hard things coming for us, personally, collectively. We know it is not the end of dark times. But as my friend reminded me, the big dark does not last forever. Bertolt Brecht was a German playwright and poet born in 1898. In the 1930s, he vehemently opposed the rising Nazi fascist regime, and he was exiled from his home in Germany, eventually moving to Scandinavia and then eventually to Southern California. In 1939, he wrote, "In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing about the dark times." We have heard this morning beautiful music from the youngest members of our community, reminding us of the gifts of hope and light at this time of the year. If Kyle is the ghost of Unitarian Christmas past, perhaps I am the ghost of Universalist present. In this moment, perhaps we need a little bit more of a reminder that the light keeps returning, that the cycles of our natural world, that our pagan ancestors and neighbors and selves and friends remind us that no matter what, the light comes again. Reminding us that there is a reason why we pause at this moment to celebrate the birth of a child 2,024 years ago who would go on to challenge an imperial government and advocate for the most marginalized in his community to be treated with dignity. Reminding us that in our faith, we are asked to celebrate the birth of every single child as one more Messiah. That every child born among us is one more possible Redeemer. That every child born with us grows up to save the world in some way. The ghost of our Universalist past and present reminds us that each of us and each child that's born is already saved and already loved. We have heard from my colleagues about the history of our own sometimes heretical tradition. Our own ancestors who sometimes were countercultural revolutionaries in their own time and place, who celebrated Christmas when it was illegal. Neighbors who may have been targeted or persecuted because of their persistent beliefs in joy and in justice and in love. Bertolt Brecht later faced surveillance in the United States from the FBI when he lived in Southern California and was subpoenaed in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee. May we be reminded what we are facing when we sing in the dark times about the dark times, when we carry each other through. There's some things we know for certain. And one of them is that the sun rose today to shine a little bit longer than it did tomorrow, than it did yesterday, than it will tomorrow. And the big dark will not last forever. The light returns whether we are ready for it or not. So in this season of darkness, of waiting, of people get ready, of Advent, of preparation, one of the things that we do is we sing together. We sing together to accompany one another as we journey alongside each other through the darkest night, knowing that we can travel with our dark feet and dark wings. May it be so, and blessed be.